Joining me today on the Krumcast is Navindra Prem, North America Head of Ecosystem Partners and Commercial Segment at SUSE. And very excited to have him kind of discuss his journey and what the partner strategy and ecosystem looks like at SUSE these days. How are you, Navindra?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Noah. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you were able to join, and as a newer addition to the SUSE leadership team, really excited to hear more about your vision today, and would love to start it off with a little bit about your background and why did you decide to join SUSE?
I've spent most of my career as the customer. So worked at places like MetLife, Pfizer, ADP, Prudential. I was CIO at Humana. And then I decided I wanted to come to this side of the world. I always had this desire to be in Silicon Valley in the software industry. So I made the switch. I went to VMware, where I led a lot of C-suite level engagements. I also ran the hyperscaler business there with all the major cloud providers. And then I joined my boss that was at VMware. He went to Nutanix after the Broadcom acquisition, and I ran the OEM business there, which was basically roughly 50% of the revenue for the company. And then been in talks with SUSE for probably 6 months now. What I find very interesting is that having been at VMware, having been at Nutanix, having been the customer, seeing the seismic shifts that are happening today related to AI, the amount of investments, the amount of sort of urgency around this, it became very obvious to me that customers, when I was a customer, I would welcome an opportunity to unlock value in legacy environments so that I can apply it towards these future state environments. And what's unique about SUSE is we also have a very, very strong presence within the application development community, specifically around Rancher. And I think that's a space that is going to lend itself very well in terms of us being able to grow market share within North America. What I also found interesting before I joined SUSE is I didn't realize that EMEA was a very, very strong market for us. As much as North America is solid, EMEA is even bigger and stronger. And so there's
Right.
like a lot of upside potential that we can go after.
Yeah, that's definitely what we found. As listeners probably know by now, we are a big partner of SUSE's in terms of our practice and Rancher being at the core of everything we do, and also opportunities and customers that we work together on. But I was in the same boat a year and a half ago when I joined Krumware. I had never heard of SUSE. I mean, maybe I had heard of it, but had no idea, how it was spelled or what they did, right? And quickly got up to speed, and yes, found, they're a European company in terms of HQ and all of that, and seemed to be a much more of a household name, if you will, in Europe. And I saw a similar opportunity as oh wow, definitely not a household name in the U.S. So
Yeah.
that means there's a ton of potential here to grow. And
Yeah, it's funny. The chameleon is our mascot, and the irony of it is that it's so perfect for us because we're everywhere, but we're invisible.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah. On one of our previous calls, getting to know you a bit, you made that metaphor, and it's right. I mean, it's yeah, and we can get into that a little bit more, but yeah, just the nature of SUSE Linux Enterprise and Rancher and the whole cloud native suite. I mean, it really is everywhere in terms of the influence and just fundamental nature of what SUSE does. But yeah, like people like you and I are out here banging the drum saying, hey, chameleons are cool, but also we need to be a little bit more visible if we're gonna hit some of those growth targets. And I wanted to hit on one thing you kind of alluded to initially about your previous roles and being the buyer, and something that I find to be a very interesting and also a little bit counterintuitive to people that haven't been in software sales or tech sales and been a part of enterprise deals and understanding what is it that the enterprise buyers really care about? Because what you see, in the marketing materials and in the headlines, uh, is often completely disconnected or even unrelated to what the enterprise buyers really care about. So would love to hear your point of view on that.
Yeah. So, the best way to describe this is what I had heard from Pfizer's CFO, sort of when I was growing up through the ranks of technology, infrastructure, and app development. We fall in love with the tech as technologists. And I remember having this conversation around a business case with Frank Diamella at the time. And I'm like, Frank, these are the cogs, these are the binary, the hex, this is all the details. Makes sense from a business perspective. And then he said to me, Navindra, we're not in the business of making sense. We're in the business of making drugs. And it made me realize that at the end of the day, companies are revenue driven. And as a technology organization within a company, your job is to help facilitate and enable that revenue. And I shifted my focus over time to be much more business outcomes focused. And that's very much the nature of the conversations that happen today. So, of course, when we sell our software, when we sell our bits, we have to gain mind share with technical buyers. The feasibility has to be there. But ultimately, you have to tell the story in a way that drives and results in business outcomes. That's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking that a step further, what are business outcomes, right? And I'm coming at excuse me, coming at this a little bit from my experience as a seller. And my experience and how I've come up is through tech sales as an individual contributor. And I've taken that journey from selling to small and medium businesses, and getting the experience, and then all the way up to enterprise. And it's very different at each kind of segment and stage, because the titles, some of them may be the same. In a lot of cases, they're not. As you get up into the larger companies, titles change, and there's just so many more of them. But for example, if you are talking about selling to a CIO of a 500 person company, maybe a 500 or a couple $100 million kind of revenue company, versus a CIO at a Pfizer, a true multi-billion, tens of billions of dollars. It's just a very different role, but also the things they care about and their kind of purview changes so dramatically. And the some of the bullet points I have in the planning of this are, the risk reduction, as something that they really care about at that large enterprise. Of course, everyone wants to reduce risk, but when they're making these decisions, a lot of times the seller is talking about innovation, and, oh, don't you want to be,
Yeah.
they're trying to sell on these bells and whistles, and and it's actually the opposite. Is this going to disrupt things? Like, can we afford to take this risk? And in my head, one kind of analogy or metaphor is, a massive ship, a or a locomotive, right? You can't just slam on the brakes and decide to go, oh, we're going to change direction, right? Like, that's what an enterprise is like. Any tiny change or um, alteration to the plan has massive ripple effects. So you can't just, decide, oh, we're going to go buy this shiny thing and go innovate like that. These things, as you could probably tell us about, there's multi-year planning that goes into this. So you can't just all of a sudden change course. So yeah, I would love to hear you kind of, maybe comment on that, or what have you seen in that way when it comes to, seller perception of what um, someone at that level cares about versus what they really care about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it cuts across all segments, right? So technology leaders, irrespective of the titles that they hold, could be CIO, could be chief digital officer, could be quite a few different things.
Right.
Um, yeah, so having these incremental changes and align into the desired business outcomes, whatever those are, we could talk about that.
Yeah.
Um, Ultimately, you get to keep your job only if you don't break things,
Yeah.
right? And so every one of these technology leaders want to transform. They have a desire and an appetite to align with the business goals and objectives. But then the biggest concern they have is, as I introduce this change into my world, is it going to break the thing that's generated, that's supporting the revenue today for the company, right? And so that's going to be 80% of where their head is, and they're going to look at everything from a risk perspective. Is it worth me changing to you, whoever you are, Mr. and Mrs. Software Company?
Yeah.
What's going to be my net sort of position as a result of that? And so am I going to be much more cost efficient, but I've taken on so much risk that the risk ends up shifting into cost into different areas? So that's the lens that most of your C-suite level executives will take.
Yeah, so let's double click into the business outcomes, and maybe you can give an example, from your experiences of, what is that business outcome, and how do you how have you or these C-level technologists that you're referring to kind of work backwards from that business outcome and make these decisions?
Yeah, so let's use AI as an example, because that's so relevant today. If you look at the level of panic and fear that's associated with this,
Yeah.
that's resulted in lots and lots of investments and organizational focus, right? In terms of companies' fear of missing out, fear of being disrupted because they're not keeping pace with the technological change. And so I think many of your customers today are trying to feel their way through what a potential business outcome could look like. There are heavy, heavy capital investments. There's pressure on CIOs and even all the way up to the CEO and the board in terms of monetizing against that investment, right? And sort of where we are in terms of the maturity curve, most companies have seen efficiencies within their company. And I can cite a couple of examples that I've experienced when I was at ADP. But in terms of truly monetizing that beyond efficiency, it's an area that still has a big question mark and TBD associated with that. I think we hear about agentic AI, we hear about humanoids, we hear about all these things that could potentially replace jobs, knowledge workers, or even manual labor. But that still lends itself more in the efficiency space, right? Um, what is the new level of insight that this intelligence is going to provide to businesses that will allow them to enter into the market in a completely unique and different way, and then monetize that? That's really the holy grail of all of these initiatives. When we look at AI and we look at its capabilities, what is it, like 3-4 weeks ago? I don't know if it was Grok or one of these guys. They have AI that's beyond Einstein level of IQ now, right? And can you imagine the doubling rate associated with that within a couple of years? So
Hmm.
you'll see the technology get to the point where it's going to provide beyond superhuman levels of insights and capabilities. Um, I'll use the company strategy as a really good example. That entire company is built on AI, essentially guiding it how to build its company, how to leverage cryptocurrencies and things like that to like this company came out of nowhere and it's now literally one of the largest companies in the world, right? So it's that what companies are struggling to figure out, and everybody's trying to feel their way through that.
Yeah, the FOMO, the fear of missing out part is a good point, and I can imagine the struggle of that balance of you have, you know, the CEO or the board or just, the general noise of, hey, we got to do something here. We got to do something here. We got to, where's our AI strategy? And as a technology leader, you have that in one ear, but then you also have in another ear, you know, you can't spend any more money this year. We need to be more efficient. We got to lower costs. But go spend money on AI, and but not, and so I can imagine that kind of tug of war is often the challenge of satisfying very different priorities, right? It's be efficient, don't spend money, but also make sure we have the shiny thing that's going to be in the headlines, right?
Yeah, and look, if you can chew bubblegum and walk at the same time, that's the best place to be.
Hmm.
And that's where I feel like SUSE specifically lends itself very, very well, right? When we look at a landscape of competitors that are increasing their prices in not so great ways for customers,
Right.
it's still a legacy set of technologies if you think about it, right? That virtualized environment and the management plane associated with that. It's going to be disrupted by AI. It's going to be disrupted by Kubernetes and containers. It is already being disrupted. And when I was a leader, I looked for all of those greenfield opportunities to disrupt my old legacy thing so I can
Hmm.
cannibalize it and start on fresh with all the best and new tech, the future state stuff, right? And I think that's where SUSE is very well positioned with Rancher. I mean, you know very well that it's among the best right now, including the hyperscaler platforms. And
Hmm.
so, yeah.
Yeah. And so, what are some of the changes that you are implementing, or what have you seen kind of in your first few months with SUSE as how you know how you can bring in a partner strategy that is a multiplier, on some of these things you're seeing from a fundamental, competitive landscape and just technology landscape as well.
Yeah, so my area of focus has been initially around changing the perception, understanding of SUSE, right? So, having been at Nutanix and VMware, I have some great relationships in the industry. Those relationships are allowing us to open up some doors at a high level that basically allows us to go in there and tell a different story, right? And unfortunately, in full transparency, a lot of these conversations are like, I don't get it. Like SUSE, I'm not really sure if I've heard about you.
Yeah.
The irony too is if you go to EMEA, everybody knows SUSE,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And we've done a really good job of advertising our technical prowess. Um, like for example, I looked at LinkedIn recently, and there was a really nice advertisement around SLES, I believe it was 16. Hopefully, I didn't get that wrong. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, I'm not really sure what that means from a business outcome perspective. And so that's why for North America, I think the market requires a different approach. It requires us to show up in ways that are much more at the business layer.
Hmm.
And so my focus has been to do that exactly. Now, when you talk about like using partners as a force multiplier, I'll use the example in my prior life. My The company had roughly 700 sellers, somewhere around there, right? If I looked at my OEMs, they had 60,000 plus sellers, right? So can you imagine just coming up with some level of a commercial construct? And we obviously have the compelling events, right? So it's not like that's not the case. And then making sure that the SUSE brand is well understood in terms of the outcomes it drives to customers and businesses, but just play the law of large numbers. I mean, we can significantly grow this business just based on the fact that our partners are way bigger than us, right? And if I pick one partner example that I've done some phenomenal business with in the past, and I'm looking to do the same here, Cisco is a very good example of a company that is looking for ways to get to the future to support those future workloads. And so you could see that there's this momentum associated with all of these different partners that are all marching in a direction that directly aligns with our sweet spot as SUSE.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know partner is one of those terms that, you know, once you start unpacking it means at least a dozen different things when you talk about the types of partners and the way you're going to, you know, interact with them and leverage, their scale or their expertise. So I know there's a lot more there, but yeah, I mean the scale alone, like, the point you're making about Cisco makes a lot of sense. And with a partner like Krumware, I know from my experience, the thing that we bring that's a lot different than a Cisco or a CDW, kind of on the other side of the spectrum of partners. Um, someone like CDW, massive scale, tons of sellers, all that, but primarily a transactional partner. There's a lot of value with that scale, and we have a previous episode with Climb, Tim Popovich with Climb, and kind of talking about those dynamics of distribution and reselling and the scale. But someone like Krumware, that is not what we're bringing to SUSE. We are not, a massive company. It's the expertise, around the SUSE products and especially the Rancher suite and our team being, and I'm quoting folks at SUSE when I say this, as good or better than the SUSE services team when it comes to knowledge and ability to implement Rancher and back to the point of business objectives, that's been a big part of our message as well with not just customers, but also SUSE sales reps and others is, it's not just about, okay, so you want to buy Rancher, cool, we can facilitate that. We can help you get set up. But then what? Like,
Yeah.
do you actually know what this is going to do to your business and how you're going to use it that aligns with your business objectives so we can take you, through that journey because, that is missing in a lot of the implementation, partners in general that I've seen is, it's all about, okay, we've got you set up, we've got this quick start or this onboarding piece, and it's still very technically focused, technical outcomes, which matter, but, it kind of stops there. And, we definitely want to be a big part of enforcing that message and keeping things as much as possible at that business objective level.
Yeah. When I think about Krumware and I look at the entire partner landscape at SUSE, I kind of have these two major categories. I look for the pull and I look for the push, right? So there's obviously partners where we have to push and get in there and tell our story and capture the mind share and the heart share. And then there's partners like you, and I see you guys at the top of the list, quite frankly, is like partners that wake up thinking about SUSE. I mean, who doesn't want that as a software company? And then I think you guys bring something unique to the table in the sense that, I saw this again in my prior lives at VMware and Nutanix, is we primarily resided within the infrastructure buy-in center. And, going into the application development center requires a different vernacular. And you guys seem to have that in spades. Being able to speak the language of that world
Mm-hmm.
is very, very helpful to us.
Yeah, it's a good point. And as someone that's uh, maybe not a technologist, I'm not sure what that definition is, but I'm definitely not technical, as they say. I don't write code, I never have, but been around technology a long time, and maybe I haven't fully appreciated kind of the uniqueness that we have in that way because we do have an application development practice. We do build custom software for customers, and we also have a platform engineering practice, as we call it, which is more of the infrastructure Kubernetes side of it, where we typically, at least the starting point of our interactions on SUSE customers and opportunities usually starts with that side of things just naturally. But we do have both, and so not only is our team able to speak that language, but we do it in practice. And so I think maybe I've undervalued how important that is when it comes to being able to have different types of conversations with different buying centers or innovation centers or whatever it may be within the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's jump on one more topic in the next 5 minutes here. I'm curious to get some of your thoughts around growth because in my prior experience, I co-founded and led a startup for a few years, and in that startup world of fundraising and VC and all that, the notion of logos is as rampant as in any other space, and it exists everywhere, right? Everyone wants the big logos on the side. Look at what we do. Look who we work with. But in reality, when you look under those logos, so to speak, there may or may not be any substance there, right? It's like I worked at a company once that we would have one developer in an enterprise, as a customer, and we'd put that enterprise logo up, right? And it's like, okay, we have one person in a 10,000 person company. So I don't know if it really should be, bragging about that, but what does growth really look like? Is it logos, or how do you think about it? Is it, just purely growing top line or purely bottom line, or, what are the metrics that matter?
Yeah, for me personally, my North Star is our EMEA market. That market has been doing extremely well, not only in terms of capturing mind share within the market, but also meaningful workloads within these massive environments and logos, right? So, it was interesting. I stumbled upon this, and I don't think I can say the name of the customer without their approval. But there's a very big, large German manufacturing company, car company. I'm a big fan of cars. And so it was just, I didn't realize how well penetrated we were with some of the largest companies in EMEA. And, we're running literally mission critical workloads at scale. And that's like such a secret that's kept that nobody here in the States knows, right?
Yeah.
And so as we've approached couple of our very large automobile manufacturing companies, we've inserted into the conversation what we've done in EMEA, and immediate traction is gained as a result of
Mm,
that because we have credibility. So again, we have this brand that's a very modest and humble brand. We've done a lot of things in EMEA. We're leveraging that to go capture additional logos and mind share within the North America market. Um, so certainly that cross pollination is part of the game plan. Definitely, when we look at the North America market share, we have a very good presence within SAP HANA environments. That was a big part of our business from the early days, and we have a lot of happy customers there. And so we're seeing that as a vector, if you want to call it that, to be able to insert all of this broader portfolio
mm-hmm.
stuff we're talking about. And then, I think this is where our partners are going to help us a lot. Like I'll go back to Cisco. I'll give them a plug there. If you think about, let's just say there's, I don't know the exact number. Let's just say it's 200,000 accounts that are potentially addressable for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Cisco's in probably all of those accounts in some form or fashion, especially given their network business.
Right.
Right. So they have wallet share with customers that we it's aspirational for us to get to some relative measure of revenue with these customers. And so we're leveraging the wallet share, the size of these other partners to really make traction. I'm going to stand up a new program shortly for the Americas that's going to be hyper focused on new logos. So there's a couple different ways that we're coming at it from a new
Yeah.
logo perspective. And then expansion is key too. Like, so once you sell the first thing, it's probably a POC or something like that. We have accelerators associated with landing a new logo. We're trying to figure out ways to extend that beyond, the first deployment, which is usually typically smaller in scale.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we're doing to get after new logos. And then we have customers that are super happy with us that we're continuing to expand with. And so that model too is working well already. So
Yeah. I realized as you were responding to my question that logos, again, is kind of a loaded term. It can mean different things, right? Because there's the logos that I was referring to or alluding to is the, hey, let us show you, the Walmart and Apple and all these, right? We want to put them on our website and brag about them. Whereas logos you're referring to, largely you're talking about acquisition of new
yeah,
customers, right? Like it's not necessarily name value. It's, hey, we don't have enough penetration in terms of the overall market. And so we need not just to grow our existing customers or logos, but to expand that. So I just wanted to clarify that because
yeah,
landing new logos, in sales terminology, means new business, new accounts, right?
yeah, and that's a business metric, right? So we have investors, and one of the metrics they use to gauge how much traction we're making within the market share is new logos. Now, to your point, we want the coolest and nicest and biggest logos, and we're
Sure.
for those two. So
Right. Yeah. It's undeniable, for better or worse, we collectively as humans, right, are drawn to that logo that, oh, McDonald's, Golden Arches. I know that one. It's just there's some psychology about that even if you're aware of it, you can't help but be impressed, right? When you see the ones you know and love.
Exactly. Yeah, back to my automobile company, I was like super impressed when as the newbie on the block in SUSE. I'm like, really? We are that well penetrated?
And
So
that's a great point um, I think that reaction that you have, right, is then to notice it and say, that's the reaction that others have
yes,
as well, right? Because that's kind of the point of it is that was a very natural and real, oh, really? So we were, oh, and so, naturally other customers and the market in general, would have that same reaction. So I think that's a great point. Cool. Well, Navindra, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again for joining us, and looking forward to being a big part of your partner strategy and your 2026 at SUSE.
yeah, and thank you, Krumware, for all that you do to help round us out, and certainly appreciate the partnership, and looking forward to doing more. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, Navindra. Talk soon.
Happy. Take care.
See ya.